Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about how to prevent burnout in your athletes. I think this is something every swim coach, any swim coach who's been coaching at least for a little bit, has seen. If you are an athlete, you maybe experienced it or even saw it in your teammates. So here is, I'm going to give you some key ways to prevent burnout, also some signs to look for, and just some stories from my coaching career. So I'm at the point in my career now where I can start to see the beginning of when a kid gets burnt out. And the hardest part about it is sometimes there's not a lot I can do about it. But what I have learned is I believe there are ways that you can prevent it. And not only that, I have seen some amazing swim parents who have really set up a situation where their kids don't get burnt out. So first off, I'm gonna tell you like for sure ways to burn kids out on the sport. First thing, at their lower levels, specifically 14 and under, like opening the full world of the sport. And by the full world of the sport, I mean like going to camps, buying all the best suits, like going all in, doing all this extra stuff and putting so much into like that idea of being as absolutely as good as you can be all the time. And I really struggled with this because, for a while I thought, if all these athletes they just did more, like more outside of the pool for swimming, they would be way better swimmers. And realistically, it's really hard to do more, especially in swimming when you get further in the sport. It just requires so much more time, training wise, at least at most programs. So, an example that I have here is like on a kid's time off, you're having them watch swim videos all the time. You have a kid, hey, make sure you do an hour of yoga this weekend. Make sure you hit every meal the way you should. And these things that I'm saying, they sound really good. But I'm just telling you from the athletes that I've seen, if an athlete is not inclined to kind of do some of that stuff on their own and they have to be like kind of pushed into it, it's not for them. And that's okay. Like you don't have to do all the extra things to be good in our sport. Like you'll be fine without it. The athletes who like naturally like just love going to YouTube and watch swimming videos or love looking up things. Like I have athletes on my team who come up to me almost every day and they're like, "What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And that's just them. That's their personality. Like I was kind of that swimmer and it wasn't taught. It wasn't taught to me. It was just like I love the sport and I was really into it. And there's kids like that on the sport. But the kids who don't really want that, like they don't want to be, oh, how's your diet? How's your sleep? How's your recovery? All this stuff, or like getting the side eye when they don't do all those extra things perfectly. So I'm just gonna tell you, if your kid's not really willing to do that stuff on their own, your athletes, or if you're a parent, your actual kid, I would not spend a crazy amount of time making sure that they do it, especially if you have to force them. But I will say on the backside of that, you can create systems in place that make those things naturally happen. So, like things that I've seen from parents is like they don't have to force their kid to turn their phone off or go to bed on time because in their house at 8 o'clock, kids pass up the phones and they're in their rooms by 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever it is. And that's just how it works in their house. And they're not there saying like, we're doing this so you can be the best athlete possible. No, it's like this is just what we do. And when you can make more things that are like this is just what we do, like even on the diet side, like a family that just cooks all their meals and eats 3 good meals a day, they're great. They're not doing it for performance. They're doing it because they value eating quality food. So it's like the bigger picture, like what's the system? You don't have to create all these little things or tell kids to keep going out of their way to do more and do more and do more. And then you get to a place, the real negative side of this is you get to a place where a kid will start feeling judged for not doing that stuff. And that's just not good for anybody. It's not good for the coach. It's not good for the parent. It's not good for the kids. And I've just seen this, and it's not good. The end game does not end where you want it to be. There's just frustration. And again, the frustration will lead to the burnout. So there's that. There's the extra. The extra will burn them out. The next thing is training too hard all the time. And believe this or not, athletes have more going on in their lives than just swimming. And I say that as somebody who's the head coach of a team, who is an all in kind of swimmer, who is an all in kind of coach. And I really go all in with my athletes. Like, I want them to be as good as possible. And a lot of the kids I coach want to be as good as possible. But I'm just telling you, if you work and work and work and everything is just hard work, there is a fatigue element that will spill over not only into like their actual physical training, but like the mental side of it. And there's just symptoms of fatigue, and it goes from lack of sleep, causing a bunch of stress and stuff like that. Like swimming induces stress. You can't put somebody in a state where they're constantly stressed out all the time, like their body is constantly trying to recover. So like you have to lay off the pressure on some point on some points. Now, I say that knowing there's a percentage of athletes who can lay it on all the time, that they can get after it all the time and they love it, beat down, broke down, whatever, like every day they're going to get after it. And that's okay too. Back to my first point. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. If they're not, not every kid loves to just be ripped all the time. And I'll say this like about kids that are better sprinters too. Like you can't just can't do that to them. You're gonna rip the sprint out of them. You're gonna rip the joy out of them. Another thing that causes burnout is sucking at meets constantly. And this one again is hard in our sport because we really have two things. You have capacity and utilization. So you have a phase of your season where you're building your capacities, whether that's aerobic training, anaerobic training, whatever it is, there's the buildup. You're building up a body of work throughout your season. Utilization is when you start bringing things down, not always a taper, but you start changing the practice structure so that your athletes' bodies can use that capacity that they've built up. Now, here's the thing, when you start going into utilization, you take away from the capacity a bit. But I will say in our sport, like it's just not working with kids being ground down all the time and and then hoping that they just swim fast at the end of the season. And I've coached a kid who like they worked really hard and their last 18 months with us were just not really good competitively wise. And it was just hard. It was just hard and at a certain point they stopped working as hard, they stopped enjoying it. They go to swim meets and they're like, I stopped caring as much because, when I care too much, I just get worked up and it doesn't turn out good. And that's hard to watch. So I'll just say, like, make sure you plan times throughout the season where your kids swim well. Swimming good is so fun. I've seen kids who are starting to get a little worn out by the training, especially early season, like where you're doing more training than racing. And they go to a meet and they have a decent meet. They have one or two best times, something like that. And they light up. Their next practice is fantastic. So, on that same thing with competition, if you compete too much, that's hard. That is stressful. Competition is stress. There's emotional stress, there's physical stress. You can't just keep building up the stress all the time. And I like to call this like, I like to say, sports is not like the movies. As much as I love a good sports movie, like sports is not like the movies. And I've seen people who a meet is coming up, and maybe it's a big meet, and there's all this pressure. Like, you got to get this cut. We're going to do everything perfect at this meet so this meet goes perfectly. I just keep going back to that first point. Make meets feel normal. The kids know which meets are a little more important and which ones are a little more stressful. They'll get a little more nervous, championship season especially. But if every meet is like, I got to get this cut, I got to get this thing, I got to go for this, I got to get that perfect meal, that's just not the way. You're just stacking that pressure. And most athletes don't need that. They don't respond to that. Again, it just goes back to the norm. You want to have that good meal before practice, before meet. It's not, hey, I'm gonna get you this perfect meal so you can swim fast. Like if you're the parent or if you're a coach, say, hey, go eat the perfect meal tonight. It's like, hey, this is what we're gonna do tonight. This is gonna be great. Um, and then on top of that, I keep going back to the beginning here. But if the kid has their own little thing with like, I love eating this before meets, then do it. Make it fun. Make it a big deal. Another thing that causes burnout is how we address failures. Failures are just part of the process. They're normal. It's not that big of a deal. When there's a failure to be experienced, you experience it, and then we move on. Everybody needs to move on. The athlete, the coach, the parent, everybody has to move on. And if you're not moving on and you're holding it over their head, like, for example, you're at practice and you're like, see, that's why you don't do this at a meet. And you're just like constantly bringing this up about a poor meet performance or something. That's just not the way to go. I just really don't think it is. And I don't think that builds anybody up. I think it just wears them down. And if you haven't listened to my stuff, I'm really talking to the majority of coaches here who are coaching club level athletes, high school level athletes. I'm not talking about like your elite guys. I think some things can be different there, but really not because they are people the same as everybody else. So another thing that adds to burnout, back to that too much too soon, it's not just in training, but it's like their exposure. So say you have a really good like 10, 11-year-old. That's awesome. Like that's cool that they're good at that age. That has like very little predictor with like 18-year-old success. Back to the burnout thing. But you have this really good 11-year-old and you're like, "Oh, they should be training with our 16-year-olds because they can hang." So what if they can hang? If they're getting better where they're at with their friends, doing it the way they're doing, you don't gotta keep turning the dial up every second you get. Like, this is why seasons matter. This is why making kids wait matters, and it makes things special. And when you remove, when you give the kids all the special things really early, the travel, the experience, the coaches, the groups, like name whatever you want, the tech suit, you run out of special things. And throughout the process of an athlete's career, you do want things to feel special. Another thing that causes burnout, this one's probably the worst one for girls especially, is a negative environment or no friends. I know very few girls that can make it through the sport without a couple of good friends that can train with them and hang out with them. And when I say this to coaches because coaches can sometimes compare athletes to each other. And especially for female athletes, comparison is like big no-no. Like don't compare girls to each other. It's really not the way to go. Like, hey, Sally over here does 500 waters every wall. Why don't you? Like that is not effective coaching. There's way better ways to do it. You go back into that shaming thing, that forcing the pressure there. And then when you compare them, especially female athletes, they don't hear, oh, I need to be as good as Sally. They hear, oh, they just think Sally's so much better than me. And that stuff gets real old really fast. So, moving kids up with their teammates, it does matter. I've had girls before not move up because they wanted to stay with their friends, and that's okay. They were happy there. They were going to be happier in that group. Who am I to say, like, no, now's the moment for you to leave all your friends and take your swimming into your own hands? Every now and then, there's going to be a girl who wants to do that. But man, you want to have a group. So, you as the coach, make sure you are elevating a group and creating an environment where people train together. You don't want just a bunch of individuals doing individual things and we'll see who makes it at the end. You want to create a group. You want to create a culture. And before I get to my last point, I'm going to touch on culture here because it's a big deal. It's probably the biggest deal. But you, as the coach, you are the leader of positivity on your team. If your team is negative, it's because of you, and you have to take ownership of that. But if there's a positive vibe, if there's a positive presence at practice, that's also going to come from you. I'm just going to tell you, a lot of kids are not inherently like positive, like, hey, this is cool. I like this. But I will tell you, all kids love relationships. All kids love a smile. All kids love to hear that they're doing well. And it's your job as the coach to create a positive environment for your athletes. That doesn't mean a soft environment. That doesn't mean an environment where, like, oh, okay, we're just here to be happy as possible. That is not the goal. The goal is positivity. And there's a lot of different ways to get there. And all of these tie in to the culture of your team. And there's a couple different cultures you can have, but things to watch out for, like a cutthroat culture, like fast as possible by any means possible, right? That's not what we want. There are situations, and our sport's very black and white. You're either fast enough or you're not. And there's a lot of natural consequences, I'll say consequences, or natural limiters or boundaries based on your ability. A big one on our team, and we just communicate this all the time, top to bottom, is relays. So we always try to put the fastest relay possible. Even if a kid, I'm gonna put this in quotations, doesn't deserve it. Like the kid who only went to 70% of practices versus 100. If they're fast enough to be on that relay, that's their relay spot. Because I believe it's a disservice to their teammates to make a relay slower on purpose. Now, if somebody's like a completely negative piece of the team, and this would be really bad to have them there, I think that's a different story. But coaches, you create the culture. And if you're an assistant coach or a part-time coach, like you might not have the biggest control over the whole culture of your entire team, but you do have a lot of control over the culture of the group you're coaching. And I get messages from coaches who like they get disappointed when the kids in the other groups burn out and they were doing so good on their group. And unfortunately, you don't have control over everything. And sometimes the best we can do is like in this moment now with these 11, 12-year-olds, 13, 14-year-olds, 15 to 18-year-olds, I'm going to make this as good as possible. And I'm going to make this as enjoyable as possible. And we're going to compete as good as possible. right? So those are the things. That's how I avoid burnout. Now, I will tell you, when you start to see burnout, it's really hard to reverse. I'll say something, especially as kids get older, lack of attendance will lead to burnout. And I know that sounds like, oh, but they're not swimming as much. The hard part is when you're not showing up, you miss that opportunity to be a part of your team. You miss that opportunity to get to know your coach. You miss the opportunity to improve. And all those negative things I talked about, they start happening more. And then the less you feel connected, the less people you have, the less you want to go. And then the less you go, it's the same exact cycle. So I tell kids all the time, like, hey, you really want to start loving this again? Show up every day and try to be nice to somebody. I mean, really, it sounds crazy, and very few athletes can even do it because it is hard. But that's a good way to shift it. Because if you don't feel success at meets, if you don't feel successful in your relationships, and then if you're out of shape because you're not training enough, you don't feel successful in your workouts, that's really hard. And sometimes when a kid turns it up pretty high, especially at 13, 14, at 15 and over, they got to maintain that level, or you got to switch up the style, or switch up the goals, or switch up the events. Oh, that's a good one. I'm just adding that in extra here. Swimming the same events all the time, every single time, great way to build burnout. We have some great kids on our team who their best event's the 4 a.m. But like, if I put them in the 4 a.m. at every single meet, by the end of the season, when we're really trying to be good, as good as possible, they're gonna hate it. They're gonna be so glad they don't have to touch that race again. A great example here in Texas is like at the high school level, you have districts, regionals, and state. And if you're a good 500 freestyler, you're going to swim the 500 free at least 5 times, maybe 6 or 7 if you have another championship meet after state. You're going to swim it a lot in like a 2 month period. And that gets really old really fast. So this is the beautiful thing about our sport is there's so many ways to mix up events. And I tell kids like until we get to a certain point in our career, which for us is usually like 17, 18, we're gonna make you better at everything. That's just how it's gonna go. And a lot of kids like that. Back to that pressure thing, like it sucks to always put pressure exactly on the 100 free, but it feels different to just try to get better at everything. And we want athletes to get better, and that's why I focus so much on our goal here to get better. And a better swimmer makes a better swimmer. So if you become better at butterfly, it's gonna make you better at your other strokes. And I think we all believe that and know that. So if you see burnout in your athletes, there's some things I probably pointed out more of what causes burnout, but so I'm just here to tell you that. And I know in our social media world right now, everything is about more the supplements, the suits, the habits, the diet, and all that stuff. I was gonna tell you guys, like most kids aren't doing everything. They're just not. A few kids do more than others, and there's some kids who are so disciplined that they're so good at doing it all, and it just doesn't even phase them that much. Like it's just part of their life. But the kid who doesn't want to do that, you don't got to force them to do all the extra things. And on top of that, like the shaming, if they're not doing those things, just watch it out. Watch out for that. So hit a couple bases there, but avoid burnout. We want kids to be in the sport, want them to love it. Big picture, like post high school, post college, they're not going to do this their whole lives. It's a moment, and you have a moment to make it as good as possible. And if that moment is only a 2 year stretch or a 4 year stretch, make it as good as possible for them. Not everybody's going to go the 8 to 16 year route, and that's okay. We got a place for those kids. And if you develop the right culture, if you have the right mindset around what you're trying to do with your athletes, I promise you, your team will get better and you'll have less burnout.